And welcome one and all to our very first podcast between GeauxPreps and CrescentCitySports.com. I'm Ken Trahan, joined by Hunter Bauer. And first and foremost, it is our pleasure to join forces with GeauxPreps, which does a tremendous job on a statewide basis in providing free information to the public on a day-to-day basis on every sport, whether it's scoreboards, features, and otherwise. GeauxPreps is there for you, and they do it the right way. And we find what GeauxPreps does to be absolutely in concert with what we do at CrescentCitySports.com. So, Hunter, first and foremost, welcome and congratulations on a fine job.
Appreciate it, Ken. Yeah, this partnership I think is going to benefit not only Crescent City Sports and GeauxPreps, but the student athletes of the state and their families and those who follow high school sports. And like I said in the release last week, it was a no-brainer to partner up with Ken and his bunch. Very professional. They do the best coverage in the state, especially in the New Orleans area. So very excited to jump on board and do this partnership with y'all. I'm excited. It's a great day for high school sports.
We agree, and we want people to go to GeauxPreps on a day-to-day basis. And not only do we encourage it, we establish a link for people to be able to do that too, because we think it's very important to not only get all the information you can possibly get, but to get it in the best fashion possible, and that's obviously what we both strive to do. All right, so we'll talk about games weekly, but we'll also talk about what's going on in high school sports in Louisiana. And, of course, most recently, yesterday, Executive Committee, Baton Rouge, you were there. Not a whole lot to talk about, but just a little bit of an update on where we stand right now from your perspective.
Yeah, it was really much to do about nothing yesterday. So the executive committee meeting occurred yesterday in Baton Rouge. I was there along with the great Robin Fambro. Basically, what happened yesterday is a lot of representatives came from not just private schools but public schools to address a situation of a modification to the eligibility criteria that member schools voted on back in January. Basically removing the phrase same school system from one of the articles in the organization's handbook. So really what this means is that alteration has the consequence of rendering students who transition from a middle school ineligible to participate as freshmen at a high school situated in a different attendance zone. So it's really, in a nutshell, it really hinders parochial schools, traditional private schools who don't have a elementary, junior high type feeder system within their attendance zone. So for instance, here in Lake Charles, St. Louis Catholic is the only Catholic school in the diocese in Lake Charles. So they're, technically their elementary, middle feeder schools are not in their attendance zones. They're either in Jennings, they're either in, around the Sulphur area or things like that. So really just several school representatives came together and voiced their opinion on this. The executive committee kind of, took in all the information. They spent last night and the first part of this morning discussing it and to see what they want to do, and then they'll make that decision today. So really just kind of a holding pattern on that issue, and but hopefully we'll have a decision later this afternoon.
We always try to read between the tea leaves, obviously, and read the tea leaves themselves. And basically what we come back to is the fact that there are always mechanisms and always moves in place to try to reunite this organization.
That's right.
And I think this is another one of those to try to please and to placate public schools. Look, in the New Orleans area, it's totally different. We have an enormous number of parochial schools, and they attract kids from different parishes by choice, obviously, and they pay a substantial amount of money to do it.
Absolutely.
So it's a tremendous impact on schools here from that perspective. But again, I think that all of these moves are clearly at least aimed in some way, directly or indirectly, at trying to reunite this organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And which would be the fair thing to do. Over the last 10 years, we've seen how the split has kind of watered down everything. The LHSA comes in, the executive committee comes in last year, and I think does a great job of revamping the playoff structure and, with the new definition of the term select that's under scrutiny right now. I think they did a great job of kind of bringing the playoffs back to where they needed to be, and now we're kind of in a holding pattern once again with that. But if we can't bring everybody back together, I think that playoff system, that structure is the best thing that we could have at this point in time. So we'll have to see what happens. Again, that court case is still going on along with this. It'll be interesting to see what happens with only, which is crazy, 6 weeks left in the regular season of the high school football.
It's maddening to not even know what the system is going to be when the postseason arrives once again for a second consecutive year. That said, the system that was in place this past school year was inherently better than what we had previously. How they got to it is another story, and that's what's being litigated right now. From the standpoint of moving forward, I sincerely hope that at least we have what we had last year, if not more than that. Of course, I've never been for the split and never will be, but I advocate for all, and I certainly respect all opinions, and I think there are ways to bring this back together. And as I've said thousands of times, I think we send a terrible message to young people that we can't work together and be together, because the LHSA polled youngsters in the last 4 years, and it was overwhelmingly in support of being together. But obviously that's not the case. And, of course, that's a story that will continue to be litigated and talked about forever until something happens otherwise. Let's talk a little bit about games. And, there are some good games every weekend. This is not the biggest week for the best cards, so to speak, in terms of the games around the state. But there are some good ones, and I wanted to start with, Catholic High of Baton Rouge at St. Thomas More. Look, Catholic, unusual fashion, has lost a couple of games. Of course, they've lost to substantial competition. STM, of course, undefeated in an overwhelming victory over a good Brother Martin team last week. So, look, I wouldn't sell Catholic short. It's not quite the team that we've seen the last couple of years, but a 4-year starter at quarterback. STM is all that defensively, still good offensively, and they're at home, and that's a tough place to play.
Absolutely. I mean, 2 of the state's top 15 quarterbacks, statistically speaking, battling it out against each other. Of course, STM has that great defense. Look, Catholic looking to snap out of a 2-game losing streak. First time in 3 years that they've lost twice in a row, and I'm surprised they lost twice in a row back 3 years ago, just how strong they've been over the last decade. And, St. Thomas More is actually looking for their first home win against Catholic in this series since 2008. So St. Thomas More is really on fire with this. I think this is a must-win for Catholic. I really do. Not, really PowerPoints-wise, but just to get that tempo back, to get that confidence back, because they still got a long way. They got a tough district to compete in. If they can compete well, go in over there at Lafayette, compete well, maybe even sneak out of there with the win. I think that says a lot for what Hudson Fullers is doing as far as building that program. I say building the program, continuing the program over at Catholic Baton Rouge. Definitely going to be a top game to watch on Friday night.
Well, I just admire schools that schedule like this, because these are the games that we want to see. Look, Catholic is 1-2, but they played Picayune. Of course, they stopped their long win streak. Lost to a really good Warren Easton team and lost to a really good U-High team. And after this game, I see them winning out until they reach Zachary anyway. And with regard to St. Thomas More, a lot of people are laughing and telling me, can we just pencil in Lafayette Christian and St. Thomas More in a rematch already in December? And certainly that has application.
Absolutely. We'll talk about it here in a minute, but Lafayette Christian's got a really good matchup this week. And it just goes to show you, Ken, these programs are not afraid to, even in week 4, go up against the best. And that's what you have to do, especially, as of last year in this new format. This is what you got to do to get those PowerPoints, to be able to get that top seed, to avoid certain rematches within the playoff, the new playoff structure, if we do happen to go back to that. So, definitely going to be interesting to see how this plays out. St. Thomas More, I think a long time coming. Again, 2008, last home win against Catholic. I don't know. Could it be their year?
Could be. Since we mentioned Lafayette Christian, we might as well transition to that. Ruston this week, of course, one big physical team and one fast team. So and that's simplifying things, but certainly I think both of those descriptions are befitting of those two programs. And look, Ruston lost a very close game to Warren Easton, but they've bounced back and played very well in the Dome last year. Yeah. Lafayette Christian, many people say they just blew it last year in the Dome, but give credit to St. Thomas More for coming back. That said, for me, LCA has the best player in the state. Jawan Johnson is all that. And at this point in time, I don't think there's a great debate about that. You got a Harlem Berry here in the New Orleans area who's a great player, and several others, but Johnson is absolutely lightning. He's elite, isn't he?
Absolutely. And what's funny about this, and I found out about this last week, he's actually chasing the all-time total offensive yards record held by Brock Berlin in the state. To even be mentioned in the high school ranks with Brock Berlin, of course, he played at Evangel, went on to Miami, had a great career at the high school level. To even be mentioned in that just goes to show you the work ethic that Juwan Johnson, an LSU commit, has put in over the last 3 years into his senior season. But I will say this, he'll be challenged by a Ruston defense that held Lafayette Christian to 20 points last year with the Ruston win. So, you got to kind of balance it out. We got to see Johnson's very good, whether it's in the air or on the ground, but you got to go to other playmakers in this series because Ruston will be looking to slow him down, which I don't think anybody has yet. Possibly the best matchup in the state this week. I don't know about you, Ken, but I think this is probably the most interesting one. Again, Ruston's only loss comes to a strong Warren Easton team. I think if Ruston's defense is on point, Lafayette Christian may have a little bit of a problem, especially going up, making the trip up there to Northeast Louisiana. That's a long road trip, so we'll definitely have to see how it plays out. But Lafayette Christian's on a mission this year. That loss stung in the Superdome back in last December with what I think is one of the best Superdome matchups. Our games in the history of the Prep Classic. So I promise you, Coach Ball is going to have those boys ready to play Friday night, but Lafayette Christian's looking for that marquee win. I think this is going to be it this week. Heading
up to North Louisiana, good matchup of unbeaten teams, Wassman and Calvary Baptist. Calvary Baptist is absolutely loaded. It's going to be hard seeing anyone beat them this year in their classification based upon the talent on hand. Ronnie Guin is a good guy, and I really like Rodney, and we talk, and communicate frequently, and he's pretty bullish on this team. It's understandable based upon his quarterback and based upon the size that this team has for its classification. Wassman has been demonstratively good in its 3 victories thus far. How do you see this?
Louisiana's number 3 offense against the state's number 1 defense.
That's
what sticks out to me. Calvary Baptist, 50 points per game. They've 5A, 4A, it doesn't matter. They've gone through some great matchups with some great teams up in Northwest Louisiana. Wassman's allowing 2 points per game. Talked to Terrence Cahey, the head coach at Wassman, the other day. I just asked him, what's different about this year? And he said, we're trying to instill in these kids that we want to punch first, not punch back. And that's really the mantra I think they're going to need to go up against this strong Calvary offense this week. That's what they're hoping to do. A couple standouts for Wassman include Richard Wilson, Jordan Williams, and Fred Clark. They're going to be the key playmakers for Calvary Baptist. For Wassman in this matchup. But you got to go up against Abram Wardell, who's leading the state in passing yards, 4 different receivers with 100 or more receiving yards. This is going to be a real test for Wassman. Can Wassman compete with the big boys? Terrence Cahey's done a great job since going to Wassman from Lake Charles Prep. He's a McNeese alum, by the way, so shout out to Terrence. But just 2 great teams going at it. Wassman's got to make the trip over to Calvary, so that's always difficult to go and play at another place. But Calvary Baptist, again, they're on a mission as well, looking to get back to the Superdome and win a state title. But it's good to see Wassman in the spotlight again. For the first time in a couple of decades. Yeah, so speaking about Haynesville and Glenbrook's a really good team. Glenbrook won several championships in the MAIS before transitioning over to the LHSAA and certainly competing right off the bat. That District 1-1A up there in North Louisiana, it's very, very, very testy. You've got Glenbrook, Haynesville, Arcadia, Homer, just a lot of great traditional programs that go at it week after week in district play. And look, Haynesville's got some payback that they want to give back to Glenbrook for those 2 straight losses in district play over the last 2 years. Haynesville's got a really good team. They're 3-0 for the first time since 2020. Glenbrook has a very good player in Chase Sintel who totaled 240 yards of offense and accounted for 42 of the team's 55 points in against Beekman Charter last week. So stop him. You may have a good chance of winning. I can certainly see this going down to the wire in Haynesville. I know that place is going to be packed. Coach Franklin's going to have those Golden Tornado football players ready. Definitely a district matchup that you're going to want to keep an eye on this week.
It is indeed, and I suspect, as I mentioned, it'll be much more competitive
Absolutely.
than a year ago. Down here in the New Orleans area at Lupin Field, Newman hosting Manny. I just thought this was great. I had both coaches on the air with me last year when they decided to do this, and I was really pleased because we all know Manny was at the forefront of the split, at least right after the fact with its previous headmaster. Jess Curtis is a good guy, and he's willing to play anyone. And as we always see and have seen on many occasions, sometimes coaches and ADs might have a little bit of a different opinion than principals when it comes to split or no split.
Right.
In the case of Jess Curtis, he's open-minded. He supported the move that they made, but was open-minded. And the very fact that he hooked up with Nelson Stewart and Newman to play last year was great. And they had a good game at Manny, which Manny won, of course. This year they come back to New Orleans. And, the interesting thing, Manny, of course, has a new coach. Playing a little bit differently this year. Got a really good win over a 5A program last week. And Newman, of course, is an interesting dynamic because the spotlight now isn't shining on them so brightly based upon the whole Arch Manning parade that took place, the circus of sorts. But this is a really good football team. It might be a better team than it was last year, and their quarterback, Eli Friend, has played extremely well. Will Orzel is very good. This is a good Newman team. This is a really good matchup. I'd put this right up there as one of the top 2 or 3 in the state this week.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing for me is how's Manny going to respond after a double overtime effort against a Class 5A Halton squad last week? That's going to be the biggest thing going in, especially making a long road trip down to New Orleans to take on this Newman squad. And I have to agree, Ken, just from the little film that I've seen and the things that I've read about Newman, I feel like this team is much better than in years past. So Eli Friend, 687 passing yards, 7 touchdowns. But, Newman's hungry to get that win at home against Manny. They went on the road last year, which was a great contest, by the way. Manny's loaded. They've got a lot of defensive guys. Tylen Singleton, who highlights that defense. I think this is going to be a battle. Manny's still trying to find their bearings. They've got their new head coach in Dylan Barrett, great guy, by the way. I think they're still trying to find their bearings and still trying to mesh as a program. But I think last week's double overtime win helped a lot. How are they going to respond? Are they going to look forward and against a good Newman team, or are they going to still be trying to lick their wounds from a really, really good battle last week?
Central Louisiana, Tioga, Marksville, good matchup, unbeatens. And, we look at Cenla every year and try to find a contender, right? Alexandria broke through a couple of years ago and almost beat Acadiana in the title game. But by and large, this has been an area of the state where we haven't had, the real power or the real contender per se annually. Perhaps we might have one with the winner of this game. Thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Tioga's a really good program. I feel like that's a program that's been building and building and building over the last couple of years. They've posted 2 shutouts in their first 3 games. So, but Marksville's averaging 32 points per game. They're very much improved. Avoyelles Parish just seems to be improving year after year as well, with Marksville and Avoyelles having success over the last couple of seasons. Tioga won last year's meeting 60-13. I think it could be a little bit closer this week. But certainly a battle of the unbeatens that I think is going to draw much attention from those in that area. Certainly, probably the game of the week in Central Louisiana.
And then finally, a matchup as we head toward the Baton Rouge area, Dunham and Ascension Catholic, and you're talking about a Dunham team that can score with anybody.
Yeah.
Week 1 they lost to Parkview Baptist in a shootout, and they've recovered and won twice then, but they can absolutely score. I mean, Airlines certainly would be the top offense, so to speak, based upon productivity dating back to last year in Louisiana. But Ascension Catholic is all that as well. They've scored 45, 39, and 40 points in 3 games. So I would suspect this is going to be a high-scoring game.
Absolutely. And, Elijah Haven taking over for Jackson House at the quarterback position for Dunham. He's done a really great job, 670 yards, 11 touchdowns. Dunham's won 4 of the last 5 matchup in this series. It was revived last year after a 5-year hiatus. So definitely a little bit of a rivalry there. Ascension Catholic has Chad Elzey at running back, 557 yards, averaging 15 yards per carry. So a lot of offense in this game that I predict. It's going to be a high-scoring affair, I believe. But definitely Dunham also trying to get back to the Superdome last year. They had a great season, great postseason in 2022. Can Ascension Catholic take on the Dunham Tigers and get a win out of it? Dunham seemed to have their number over the last couple of matchups.
All right, so GeauxPreps, we want people to make sure you go there on a day-to-day basis. And the power rankings, of course, each week, nobody does it better. And in addition to that, the statistical leaders that are put out on a week-to-week basis, which Hunter has to work really hard to get information. And I'd want to make this qualifier right now for everyone. If someone's missing, that's because the information hasn't been submitted. We do the very best we can on a day-to-day basis to provide that information, but we absolutely need the cooperation of people. And of course, at Crescent City Sports, our day-to-day reports on whatever sports transpiring at that particular point in time, including volleyball, going along with football right now, feature stories as well, and our scoreboard on Friday night. Of course, our radio show on Friday nights on 5 stations, which runs 6 hours and makes me tired just thinking about it each and every Friday night. And we'll have to get Hunter on the radio show too.
Absolutely.
I promise we'll do that soon. But Hunter, hey, this is great. A pleasure. First time out. Really good having you. And again, couldn't be happier about sharing an audience with you and with GeauxPreps. And we admire what you do. Keep up the great work, and God bless you and yours. And we'll do it again next week.